So anyways, okay.
So it sounds like Zwingli is Nestorian.
I mean, yeah, that's the typical Lutheran criticism. I would say that he's just a very extreme version of. He still accepts some of the distinctions that they made in the early church about how the divine nature is the subject of the incarnation and things like this. So he wouldn't be an outright Nestorian, but he definitely tends in that direction. I would say. I think it'd be better to say he's a really extreme version of the Leonine Christology. So,
God has unlimited power.
Right.
Why would he limit himself to symbolism when he has the power with his
because
word?
Because he wants the human nature to remain human, and the only way that he can do that is by limiting Jesus to the right hand of God. So you destroy the human nature of Jesus if you made him present in many places at once.
That's good. Okay.
He'd be like a hybrid between divine
But
and
I'm
human.
thinking of the teaching that when God says, "This is my body," why would he limit himself to be a symbolic gesture when he has the power?
Right. Well, again, I think that they're trying. Again, I think that they're trying to maintain their fidelity to the Chalcedonian formula of two natures, one person. So, again, I think in an inept way. Obviously, everybody who signed on to the formula in the early church, two natures, one person, believed in the real presence. So, obviously, they didn't think it was a contradiction. So.
But you're not going to solve the mystery.
Well, yes. And that's the thing too, as I pointed out before. It is mysterious, though. How can a human body remain human and be one? So, but we accept it on faith. Yes. Whereas I think which is keeping with Luther's nominalism. Whereas Zwingli has this much more Thomistic view of faith and reason, where the order of reason and the order of faith are both created by God, and so they have to fit together like hand and glove. Right? So they mutually illuminate each other. It's not that one is higher than the other in a certain sense. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give context. I probably, I'm coming from, I'm coming off of seeing the supper as purely memorial for about the last 9 months. I just say, I have no idea what's going on.
Okay.
But one of the things that, with the Lutheran view of the Lord's Supper, one of the concerns I've had is it becoming sort of like a works righteousness, where it's like and the way I sort of would reason how it would not be is that I had two potential ways. One is just it's not hard to do. That's one, but that's not a super great argument. But then the other one was just I don't remember if I thought this or somebody told me this, but it's the so it's not your actual act of going and taking communion. Right. That is communing grace to you, or what? It's that God fulfills what He said He would do when you go and take it.
Yes.
But
right.
It seems to me that if we're saying that God is essentially has bound Himself to do that now.
Yes.
It seems to me like that could sort of result in a works righteousness, where it's if I go and take communion, therefore I receive grace, essentially no matter what. But I don't know.
Well, faith is the thing that makes the difference, right? Because Paul says you eat and drink judgment on yourself, and you do without faith, right? You do without discerning the body. So it's just a visible form of what you hear auditorily happens in the sermon. You could argue, again, it's a very typical, many Protestants make this argument. I've heard a number of Baptists make the argument about it being a form of works righteousness because you're doing something. But if you walk to a church and listen to a sermon, I guess in that sense you're doing something.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that you look to a place where God is what God has we look to a place where God has bound himself by his word. And so the word is really the thing that matters. So. And Luther would also point out that there's actually no word that God pronounces that he doesn't bind to some kind of physical object. Even if you're reading the Bible, what's the Bible about? It's about salvation history, which is a physical thing, right? So he's attached his word to a concrete set of historical events that he will then save and redeem you through. So, so there's nothing but so Luther would actually say there's no such thing as just the bare word, right?
Okay.
Accepting God's word that it is my body is not in any form an act of works. The works is God's. God is doing the work by giving us his body and his blood.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, I think that I think that a lot of Protestants end up rejecting the sacraments because they see it as a work, because that's very much how it ended up getting constructed, at least in popular medieval religion. And so they say, okay, well then what do we do with these things now? And so they come up with all kinds of weird ideas, essentially, about what the sacrament should be about, which completely ignore what the text in the New Testament says.
And God really only comes to us in his word and sacraments.
Right. Sure. Any other questions?
It's too simple.
Yes, it's very simple. Yes, I agree. Okay, well, I'll just finish up with this. Okay, so Philip of Hesse, who was one of the southern princes that had supported Luther, wanted to get these guys together because wouldn't it be great if all the Protestants could get together and fight the Catholics? So let's fix this problem. So the delegate from Wittenberg comes, and then the delegates from the Swiss and southern German city-states. Of course, interestingly enough, that all the Swiss and the other Reformed people didn't agree. Zwingli went for a symbolic interpretation, as did Echo Lampadius, but the people like Martin Bucer, well, they went for spiritualistic interpretation. So Christ is spiritually present, at least, and that became the more influential position in the Reformed tradition because Bucer was the teacher of Calvin then. Okay? So they bring them together at Marburg Castle. It's over a weekend, and they debate it out. And Luther, before the debate starts, he comes up with a strategy. And this is how you win a debate. By controlling the terms of the debate, you'll automatically win. So he writes on the desk in chalk, "This is my body, hoc est corpus meum," in the Latin, or get the term, by the way, hocus pocus, hoc est corpus meum, by the way. And he puts a cloth over it so that he reminds him, keep it on that topic. And they throw any argument that they can. They think that they found church fathers who support the symbolic view. They ask, well, what's the point of having the real presence? Well, Luther says, if God put it in front of me and said to eat it, I eat it, right? So, again, prove that the words, this is my body, don't mean this is my body. And they just couldn't crack him at all. Zwingli got very angry and very emotional with him on a number of occasions. And so eventually they agreed that they couldn't agree on this. And they drew up a confession with 14 points. The 14th one, they said, well, we can't agree with this, and we pray the other side stops being heretics and agrees with our side, right? Zwingli actually wept and said he wanted to reconcile with Luther, and Luther says, well, stop being such a big heretic, okay? And Melanchthon commented, well, they're of a completely different spirit than we are. So after this point, the Reformed and Lutheran traditions could go their own separate ways. Zwingli, the next year, the other cantons that were still Catholic ended up not being real happy that Zurich had adopted the Reformation and began to attack them. Zwingli then was killed in battle, and Luther said, well, there you go, God's judgment on him. Obviously he was wrong. Because, well, this is a tradition going back to the early church that heretics always end up dying in a horrible way. So Arius, he was exiled outside the Roman Empire, and we're told by the church historian Socrates that he was coming into Alexandria, and the Alexandrian church didn't know how they could deal with it because Constantine was letting him come back. And then luckily, he went to relieve himself in a latrine, and his guts exploded out of him. So, like Judas. So that was the idea. So there was a tradition. So Luther says, well, he must be wrong. There's this tradition that, of course, heretics always die these horrible deaths. So, anyways, and yes, go ahead.
So from what I've read about it, and particularly Bucer, who comes across as an ELCA ecumenicist, in other words, he'll agree with anything. They really didn't agree on all 13 points.
Well, that's what I was mentioning earlier, like they do affirm things like confession and absolution. The Southern Reformers definitely thought that was bad. Because again, does the pastor's word actually communicate absolution? Well, no, physical things like the sound of the pastor's voice don't communicate anything, right? So yeah, and then of course, though it's outside the bounds of this, Bucer ends up going to Wittenberg and signing an agreement where he seems to tacitly accept the real presence. And then, actually I read a whole book about this recently, I reviewed it, but then it really turns out not to be terribly sincere. Though it was called the Wittenberg Concord, and a lot of the southern German cities that had been reformed, actually though, that adopted it, ended up going the direction of Lutheranism later on, so that would actually be pretty good. Though Luther, of course, ended up losing my faith in Bucer as a result of that, so. I actually, it was funny, I was teaching this on an online course, and I had an ELS student who asked a question that it hadn't occurred to me, and they were there over the weekend, so they'd be on Sunday, so did they have a church service together, right? So did they have fellowship? So I said, well, I mean, you know, since Luther was a member of the Missouri Synod, of course, he had their fellowship, but probably not sacramental fellowship with them, so. Anyways.
So I wonder what they did.
I don't know what they did. Maybe they prayed in separate rooms or something. Who knows? Any other questions? I did actually get through the whole one of those, so it's good. You know, we got to Calvin, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, go ahead.
So I do have the opportunity for you to get to Calvin a little bit. So what would you say to someone who says that Calvin is really the middle way, the compromise between Luther and Zwingli with his spiritual presence of Christ? So it's more than a memorial, but it's not quite physical reality.
Okay, well, I mean, you know, maybe a town agrees to, one half of a town thinks that building a bridge is a good idea, and the other half doesn't. Okay, and so you compromise them by building half the bridge, right? So.
Great.
Other questions?
So we'll actually repeat that. That would be good.
So, why were they so into killing the heretics? What was their rationalization?
Well, because, one, you're going to send people to hell because they'll infect other people with their wrong beliefs, and then they'll send people to hell, which is much worse than murdering people. And then secondly, again, belief system and way of life are not separable from one another. So in the next century, to flip ahead, two things happen. One, the scientific revolution happens. And two, people blow each other up in religious wars, the English Civil War and the 30 Years' War, which devastates, of course. We got a lot of good hymns out of it, but the price of that was killing a third of the population in Central Europe, okay? So people say, whoa, okay, we got to base the state on something different than religion. People have these things called rights, and so governments are like utilities that protect people's rights, okay? So people have the autonomous right to pursue whatever they think is good in this public realm, and then there's a private realm where you push religion and morality, okay? And then in the public realm, also in terms of knowledge, science gets to decide what's real and what isn't real, right? Because the scientific revolution, turns out to be this amazing thing because, people get all this knowledge they hadn't had before, and you can actually verify it, like what Galileo says can be verified by Kepler, and whereas they say, well, but the Calvinists and the Lutherans keep on disagreeing with each other more and more, but the sciences keep on converging, right? So in this public realm, and this is what we call modernity now, rights-based government, okay, and then science get to define what's real, and then there's a private realm where religion and morality function. So hence, we can see where we get our current situation. So we have the secular realm and the private religious realm, which is useful because, again, we don't blow each other up in religious wars or blow people's heads up with gunpowder. On the other hand, though, you can never make any argument on the basis of religion in a public sphere. And right, I mean, for example, why is Jack Phillips an inherent disadvantage against his opponents? Well, he's bringing his private, irrational religious beliefs into the public realm where other people are pursuing what they consider to be their autonomous sense of the good, right? So, and this has been going on since the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment comes after. Enlightenment ends up now being a way of fixing the problem caused by religious pluralism, essentially, right? So we're perfect. So we're the children of the Enlightenment too. We don't want to go back to the witch hunts and the heresy trials, right? On the other hand, there are other things that seriously didn't work out in our favor in terms of